There was a time when desserts didn't come from bakeries. They came from handwritten cards, stained with sugar and memory. In the 1970s, kitchens were filled with quick, creative sweets made from simple, sometimes surprising ingredients. Recipes passed between neighbors, shared at potlucks, and served after long family dinners. But today, many of those desserts have quietly vanished. Forgotten. Replaced. Left behind in fading cookbooks. So tonight, we're stepping back into that lost era, uncovering 10 easy homemade desserts from the 1970s that almost no one makes anymore. And by the end, you might just rediscover a taste you didn't know you missed. It often appeared at gatherings without much announcement, a pale green dessert, soft, creamy, and topped with crushed nuts or cherries. To some, it looked unusual. To others, it was a familiar comfort. This was Watergate salad, a no-bake creation that quietly became a staple in 1970s American homes. Despite its name, it had nothing to do with politics in any official sense, yet it carried the mystery of its time. Made with pistachio pudding mix, canned pineapple, whipped topping, and marshmallows, it was the kind of dessert that required no oven, no complicated steps, just a bowl and a spoon. In an era where convenience foods were rising, this dessert fit perfectly into busy households looking for something quick but memorable. What made Watergate salad special wasn't just its simplicity, but the feeling it brought. It showed up at potlucks, church gatherings, and family dinners, often sitting beside casseroles and savory dishes, waiting to offer a sweet, cool contrast. Its soft texture and light sweetness made it easy to serve, easy to share, and easy to remember. But over time, as tastes changed and homemade desserts became either more elaborate or more health-conscious, this quiet classic began to disappear. The bright green color that once felt fun and modern started to feel outdated, even strange to newer generations. Still, for those who remember it, Watergate salad isn't just a dessert. It's a memory of a different kind of kitchen, one where simplicity ruled, and where even the most unusual recipes could become tradition without question. It started with a simple poke, fresh from the oven. A warm cake would be pierced again and again, small holes covering its surface like a quiet ritual. Then came the color, bright liquid gelatin slowly poured over the top, sinking into every space. What emerged hours later was something unexpected. This was Jell-O poke cake, one of the most visually striking desserts of the 1970s. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary sheet cake. But once sliced, ribbons of color revealed themselves inside, reds, greens, sometimes even layered shades depending on the flavor used. It was playful, almost surprising, and perfectly suited for a decade that embraced convenience and creativity in equal measure. The process itself was simple. A boxed cake mix formed the base, baked quickly in a rectangular pan. After cooling slightly, it was punctured with a fork or wooden spoon handle. Then came the gelatin, dissolved, slightly cooled, and poured slowly so it could seep deep into the cake. Once chilled, a layer of whipped topping was spread across the surface, often finished with sprinkles or fruit. This dessert became a favorite at birthdays, school events, and neighborhood gatherings. It was easy to prepare, easy to transport, and most importantly, it always caught attention when served. But like many desserts of its time, it slowly faded. The artificial colors, once seen as exciting, began to feel excessive. Preferences shifted toward more natural, less processed sweets. Still, for those who remember that first slice, Jell-O poke cake wasn't just dessert. It was a small moment of surprise, hidden beneath an ordinary surface, waiting to be revealed. It didn't begin with careful measuring or precise steps. It began with dumping everything into a pan. No mixing bowls, no complicated instructions, just layers of canned fruit, dry cake mix, and butter placed on top. As it baked, something unexpected happened. The ingredients transformed on their own, creating a warm, golden dessert known as the dump cake. In the 1970s, this dessert became a quiet favorite for families who wanted something sweet without the effort of traditional baking. One of the most popular versions used canned pineapple or cherries, spread evenly across the bottom of a baking dish. A dry cake mix was sprinkled over the fruit, followed by slices of butter placed across the surface. That was it. No stirring. No blending. As the oven heat worked through the layers, the fruit began to bubble, releasing syrup that rose into the dry mix above. The butter melted slowly, creating a soft, crumbly topping. What came out was part cake, part cobbler, sweet, rich, and slightly uneven in texture, but comforting in a way that didn't need perfection. It was often served warm, sometimes with a scoop of ice cream melting into the surface, turning each bite into something soft and indulgent. And because it required so little time and effort, it became a go-to dessert for last-minute gatherings or quiet evenings at home. But as baking trends shifted toward precision and presentation, the simplicity of dump cake began to feel too plain. It lacked the polished look of modern desserts. Still, for those who remember it, dump cake represents something rare, a time when dessert didn't need to be perfect to be worth making. It was bright, delicate, and almost too pretty to disturb, a bowl filled with soft pastel colors, tiny marshmallows, and glistening pieces of fruit. Often served chilled, it looked more like decoration than dessert. This was ambrosia salad, a dish that carried a much older history, yet found a new life in the kitchens of the 1970s. Its name meant food of the gods, but its ingredients were surprisingly simple. Canned mandarin oranges, crushed pineapple, shredded coconut, and miniature marshmallows were gently folded together, often bound with whipped topping or sour cream. In some homes, maraschino cherries added a bright contrast, while others kept it minimal and light. What made ambrosia unique was its texture. Each bite offered something different: soft fruit, chewy coconut, airy cream. It wasn't baked, it wasn't structured, and yet it felt complete. In a decade where convenience ruled the kitchen, this dessert required nothing more than a bowl, a spoon, and a bit of patience while it chilled. It appeared at holiday tables, church gatherings, and family reunions, quietly sitting among heavier dishes. Its cool sweetness offered relief after rich meals. Making it more than just a dessert, it became part of the tradition itself. But over time, its identity began to blur. Newer generations questioned whether it was a dessert or a side dish. The use of canned fruit and marshmallows, once embraced, started to feel outdated. Still, for those who remember, ambrosia salad holds something deeper than its ingredients. A reminder of shared tables, soft laughter, and a time when even the simplest dishes carried a sense of occasion. It sounded like a mistake the first time anyone heard it: chocolate cake made with mayonnaise. Not butter. Not oil. Mayonnaise. Yet in kitchens across America during the 1970s, this unusual ingredient became the secret behind one of the moistest cakes ever baked. Chocolate mayonnaise cake wasn't entirely new, but it found a strong revival in this era of practical cooking. With eggs and oil already blended into mayonnaise, it simplified the process. There was no need for multiple ingredients or complicated steps. Just a few additions, a quick mix, and into the oven it went. As it baked, the kitchen filled with the deep, familiar scent of chocolate. And when it emerged, the result was surprisingly rich. The texture was soft, almost velvety, with a depth of flavor that didn't hint at its unusual base. Those who didn't know the secret would never guess what made it so tender. It became a quiet favorite for home bakers who valued both simplicity and reliability. Recipes were often passed along on handwritten cards, shared between friends who trusted the result more than the method itself. It was a cake that didn't need decoration or attention. It spoke through its texture alone. But as time moved forward, the idea of mayonnaise in dessert began to feel strange, even unappetizing to many. Baking trends shifted toward more traditional ingredients, and this recipe slowly slipped out of common use. Still, for those who remember, chocolate mayonnaise cake represents something deeper than curiosity. It reflects a time when resourcefulness shaped the kitchen, when even the most unexpected ingredient could quietly become something unforgettable. It rarely touched the oven, and that was exactly the point. In the 1970s, when time felt short and kitchens were busy, no-bake desserts quietly became a staple. Among them, one stood out for its richness and simplicity: no-bake peanut butter bars. At first glance, they looked modest. Cut into neat squares, sometimes topped with a smooth layer of chocolate, they didn't demand attention. But one bite revealed something deeper: dense, sweet, and filled with the unmistakable comfort of peanut butter. The process was almost effortless. Crushed graham crackers formed the base, mixed with peanut butter, powdered sugar, and melted butter. Pressed firmly into a pan, the mixture created a thick, sturdy layer. On top, melted chocolate was spread evenly, forming a glossy finish that hardened as it cooled. There was no baking, no waiting for the oven, just time in the refrigerator as the layers settled together. These bars became a favorite for families who needed something quick but satisfying. They appeared at school events, bake sales, and quiet evenings at home, offering a dependable sweetness that required little effort. What made them special wasn't just their taste, but their accessibility. Almost anyone could make them, regardless of skill. There were no complicated techniques, no risk of failure. But as desserts evolved, these bars began to fade into the background. New recipes, often more elaborate, took their place. Still, for those who remember, no-bake peanut butter bars are more than just a treat. They are a reminder of a time when dessert didn't need heat, precision, or perfection, just a few simple ingredients and the patience to let them come together. It was a dessert that felt both humble and indulgent, a simple layering of vanilla pudding, sliced bananas, and crisp vanilla wafers, all topped with a cloud of whipped cream. Banana pudding with vanilla wafers was a staple in 1970s American kitchens, quietly bridging the gap between everyday comfort and special occasion treat. What made it memorable wasn't complexity, it was the careful layering that created contrasts in texture. The soft, sweet bananas blended with creamy pudding, while the wafers softened just enough to melt slightly, yet still offered subtle crunch. Each bite was a gentle balance of flavor and nostalgia, reminiscent of Sunday dinners and family gatherings. In many homes, this dessert wasn't just about taste, it was about memory. Mothers and grandmothers would prepare it ahead of time, letting the layers meld in the refrigerator while life carried on around the kitchen. It was effortless to make, yet it carried a sense of care, a tangible expression of love and hospitality. Banana pudding also reflected the era's approach to dessert: simple, comforting, and accessible. Ingredients were easy to find, preparation required no special tools, and the end result was universally appealing. It became a quiet favorite at potlucks, picnics, and holiday tables alike. Over time, though, banana pudding began to fade from popular memory. New desserts, fancier presentations, and changing tastes gradually replaced it. Yet for those who grew up with it, it remains more than a recipe. It's a symbol of a slower, gentler time in the kitchen, where sweetness was measured not just in sugar, but in care, patience, and the quiet joy of sharing something homemade. It was a dessert that promised indulgence without the oven, a cool, layered creation that looked elegant yet required almost no effort. Icebox cake became a favorite in the 1970s because it combined simplicity with a touch of sophistication, perfect for families who wanted dessert fast but memorable. At its core, the cake relied on two things: cookies and whipped cream. Graham crackers or chocolate wafers were layered with whipped topping, sometimes sweetened or flavored, then refrigerated for hours. During that time, the cookies absorbed moisture, transforming into soft, cake-like layers. By the time it was sliced, each piece revealed delicate strata of creamy sweetness alternating with tender cookies, creating both a visual and textural treat. This dessert had a quiet charm. It could be made ahead of time, transported easily to gatherings, and served without fuss. In an era when convenience was rising but flavor still mattered, icebox cake offered both. Families would experiment with chocolate, fruit, or even nuts, creating endless variations while still keeping preparation remarkably simple. Yet, like many desserts of the era, it gradually disappeared from mainstream kitchens. The rise of more modern, sophisticated baking and the focus on elaborate presentation pushed this simple classic to the background. Still, for those who remember, icebox cake isn't just a dessert, it's a memory of lazy afternoons, shared among family and friends, where a few simple ingredients could create something unforgettable. It represents a time when the joy of dessert came as much from anticipation and sharing as from taste itself. It was bright, tangy, and impossibly easy, a dessert that could brighten even the dreariest day. Lemon Lush emerged in the 1970s as a favorite for those who wanted something sweet, creamy, and refreshingly citrusy, yet quick to prepare. Its layers offered both texture and flavor, creating a treat that felt indulgent without demanding hours in the kitchen. The base was typically a simple crust made from crushed cookies or shortbread, pressed firmly into a pan. Over this, a smooth, tangy lemon custard or pudding was poured, immediately setting the stage for something rich yet light. The top layer was often whipped cream, spread generously to balance the sharpness of the lemon below. Some versions added a sprinkling of coconut or a few zest shavings, giving it a subtle crunch and aromatic lift. Lemon Lush became a staple at family gatherings, potlucks, and holiday meals. Its appeal was in the contrast: the firm, buttery base, the tart, creamy middle, and the soft, airy topping. Even those new to baking could assemble it with ease, yet the final result looked impressive, as though hours had been spent crafting it. But like many desserts from that era, Lemon Lush began to fade over time. As tastes shifted toward richer, chocolate-forward desserts or intricate pastries, this simple citrus creation lost its place in modern cookbooks and kitchens. Yet for those who remember it, Lemon Lush is more than just dessert. It carries the nostalgia of a time when desserts didn't need elaborate techniques to impress, when a few straightforward ingredients could create joy. Every bite is a reminder of 1970s kitchens, inventive, accessible, and quietly magical in their simplicity. Sometimes the simplest desserts leave the longest memories. Rice Krispies Treats, a childhood favorite, took on new forms in the 1970s, evolving beyond the basic marshmallow and cereal combination into something more playful and indulgent. These variations captured the imagination of both children and adults, becoming a staple for lunchboxes, potlucks, and after-school snacks. The traditional version was straightforward: melted butter and marshmallows mixed with Rice Krispies cereal, pressed into a pan, and cut into squares once cooled. But the 1970s brought experimentation. Some households added chocolate chips, peanut butter, or colorful sprinkles. Others shaped them into fun forms: hearts, stars, or even holiday-themed designs. These tweaks transformed a humble treat into a centerpiece of nostalgia, playful enough to excite children yet satisfying for adults. What made these treats special wasn't just taste, it was the hands-on creation. Families would gather around the counter, stirring, pressing, and shaping together. It was a dessert that invited participation, a quiet ritual in many homes. The sticky marshmallow mixture, the sound of cereal crunching, and the sweet aroma filling the kitchen became part of the memory, inseparable from the dessert itself. Over time, as packaged treats and more complex desserts gained popularity, these homemade variations began to disappear. Rice Krispies Treats remained, but the playful, creative 1970s versions slowly faded from family tables. Yet for those who remember, these treats are more than a snack. They are a symbol of a simpler time, when dessert was about joy, creativity, and shared moments in the kitchen. Every bite is a reminder of laughter, sticky fingers, and the magic of turning simple ingredients into something unforgettable. It's a connection to a decade when desserts were quick, easy, and filled with love. These desserts from the 1970s may have faded from most kitchens, but their flavors, textures, and stories linger in memory. From Watergate salad to playful Rice Krispies variations, each recipe reflects a time when simplicity, creativity, and family gatherings shaped the way Americans enjoyed sweet treats. Rediscovering them isn't just about taste, It's about connecting with a lost era, remembering the warmth of shared kitchens, and bringing a touch of nostalgia back to our tables. If you enjoyed this journey through forgotten desserts, don't forget to subscribe for more lost recipes and timeless stories from America's culinary past.